Before we get into today's little project, I want to give a very special shout out and a recommendation to all my subscribers. The reason why I'm pointing at this mid to late 90s carbon suspension fork on my S-Works in the very recesses of my bunker is a clue to a very special treat for anybody that's interested in retro mountain bikes, rebuilds and restorations. If you subscribe to this channel and enjoy it, you are going to love what I'm about to recommend. Long story short, a very dear friend of mine by the name of Daniel Bonner has just joined YouTube, and his first, well, this is his second build actually, but it'll be his first YouTube video, is definitely worth a watch. Like I said, this fork is a clue. Believe me, the bike that he has built is far more exotic and rare and interesting than the one that I'm pointing the camera at. So without further ado, I'm going to leave a link below. When you've seen this short video, please go and have a look at his, and I look forward to hearing what you think. Now here's an interesting project. This Shimano light action rear derailleur was £8 off eBay. You'd know why if you saw the state it was in when it arrived. It was pretty much entirely rusty and covered in black grease and grime. I spent one sunny afternoon polishing it, and I'm very proud of the outcome. It has still been described by one of my fellow gentleman collectors as Neanderthal technology. He's a terrible snob. The fact is, yes, this was a base model rear mech. It dates back to probably the 80s, I would say, long before, well, not long before, but certainly it predates indexing, which means the gears didn't click into place. You had to sort of move the gear shifter and use your instincts and your ear to get the thing into gear. So this is off a 5-speed, or rather 10-speed, because it had a double chain set, road bike, which I recently restored for a friend of mine. Now, when this bike arrived here, it was probably in the crustiest, most neglected state I think I've ever worked on. I think it had been used to prop up a shelf of paint in a shed for, God, I'd say 20 years. It was covered in paint, cobwebs, rust, everything was bent, the wheels were out of true, nothing worked. To be honest, he was talking about chucking it in a skip, but I said, no, I'll take the challenge. And by the time I'd finished with it, I think I put a beautiful new saddle and some white bar tape on it, and actually made it look and feel rather lovely. Now, I didn't get any footage at the time because I was just enjoying myself one sunny day. I've only got a couple of photos. But what's interesting is that bike has now come back to me with the rear mech, and I knew this because it was like this when I let him have it back. The rear mech was twisted. Now, at the time, I took an adjustable spanner and a hammer to it to try and twist it back. And because the gears aren't indexed, and therefore were never particularly precise in the first place, we were able to just sort of twist it back so that it worked. However, it was never perfect, so when this one came up on eBay, I bought the new rear mech, and now we're going to fit it. One more little tip for you from the Pros Workshop. These H&L marked limiter screws are basically to stop the derailleur from throwing the chain off at the bottom of the block or at the top. So what you do is basically adjust them by eye. Now, what is quite curious about them is H&L obviously stand for high and low, but they stand for high and low in terms of gearing ratios, not in terms of the sort of geographical position of the chain. So when I was a kid, it took me a while to work out that high didn't mean the highest cog, i.e. the biggest one. It actually meant the smallest cog, i.e. the fastest gear. Well, that was a very easy job. And you can see why it needed doing. This thing's obviously had a giant pallet of bricks stored on it or some kind of huge impact. Thankfully, the impact didn't damage anything, not the frame, not the hanger, not the dropout, only the derailleur. And the derailleur, as you can see, is completely trashed. So where the screwdriver is pointing is where the derailleur hanger is, and it's supposed to be parallel with the cage. But look at the difference, look at the angle there. That is an insane amount of bend. And that's after I'd attacked it with a hammer and adjustable screwdriver. It used to be even worse. So it was beyond repair. It kind of worked, but not very well. The new one, I'm pleased to say, is flawless. Although without indexing, you do need the hand, eye and ear of a musician to get the hang of it. But hopefully it should be better than new now.